Hello, hello. Welcome to the show. Arlene Washburn is an award-winning expert in the matchmaking and coaching industry. She has been named the most innovative woman in matchmaking. As a master executive certified matchmaker and coach, she's helped single people find meaningful connections using research-backed strategies. Arlene founded AV Connections, where she created the Get Real, Get Love coaching platform for singles. She is passionate about connecting singles and believes that finding love can be done with science, research, and confidence. Arlene, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great, May. So good to be with you.
Thank
Finally,
you.
I'm excited to be on your podcast.
Awesome, awesome. Today we will just talk about a bunch of things, and I'm so excited to talk about virtual dating because it is so necessary. And so many people maybe hop on FaceTime or Zoom or WhatsApp, but they don't actually know the strategies and dating tips when it comes to virtual dating. So today we'll talk about that. And Arlene has expert tips for people listening out there and help everybody be great daters and hopefully help them find the one for 2023, right?
Absolutely. And you saw that, a lot of the people in our industry who are matchmakers during the pandemic were setting up their clients on virtual dates. So it's really important to do that properly so that, you come across in the best possible way. And, you know, primarily for men, if they don't do it the right way, they can come across as creeps, and we want to avoid that, right? Because it still is a first date, right?
Right, right. Do you get in the habit of calling the first Zoom date or virtual date zero date? Have you heard that term? Do you
I
call it zero date or do you
Yes.
count it as a date? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I call it a zero date, particularly for people who are using online dating platforms and they've corresponded a few times and decided, okay, let's do a virtual date. And I think that is the best course of action. Like you can send a few messages, maybe have a phone conversation, but ideally you go jump on video and you actually get to verify that they are who they say they are, that they look the way they're portraying themselves on their profile. And yeah, I definitely call it a zero date because there is energy and effort that's put into it, but it's not as much as you would when you have to go meet someone, for the first time. So yeah, I definitely call it a zero date.
So, based on working with singles that you're in your field, do you find that people prefer a phone call date or a video date?
I think it depends on the age. I've noticed, I do attract a lot of folks who are middle-aged like me. I think that a lot of middle-aged folks were a little bit uncomfortable doing virtual dates. They felt more comfortable having a phone conversation. And I think with what we went through with COVID and also Zoom becoming a thing where everybody now knows what Zoom is, I think it's become more and more common. And quite honestly, I think that people should use that as a format of like corresponding a few times if you're meeting people online, maybe having a phone conversation, but I would just take it to a zero date, which is on video, and then meet in person if you feel comfortable after that interaction.
So, what are some things that you can advise middle-aged men and women to do to take advantage of all our technology and to put their best foot forward?
Well, there's a lot of things that people can do in terms of putting their best foot forward. I would say for women, it's really important to prepare yourself as if you're going on an actual date. You do need to put on makeup and do your hair and all that good stuff. I mean, same with men. Make the effort, make sure you don't have a lot of superfluous hair showing because when you're on video and it's just your face, it's a lot more visible, right? I think it's important to have the proper attire, at least from the waist up. But make sure you don't stand up if you're not wearing pants. And lighting is everything because most people don't realize that the light needs to be in front of you, not behind you. If you have light behind you, it's going to make you look dark and it could make you look creepy. And I mentioned that before. I've seen so many people do that And I don't know if they're just not seeing themselves on the video or what, but you have to be self-aware. So definitely lighting is super important. You want it in front of you, natural light. You can just sit in front of a window if it's daytime. If not, buy yourself an inexpensive ring light that you can put on. So those are just a few things. Definitely clean up the mess that you have behind you. A lot of people are not noticing that they have a messy background, and then people might start to form opinions about you just based on that.
Right, right. My background right now is actually a virtual background. So it looks like I have a bookshelf behind me, but really my dog is actually sleeping behind me. So it helps to either blur out your background or have a fake background. It's better than people looking at what's that stuff he has in the back? Are those, is that a six pack or like what is that? So people can get really nosy, right? And like you said, form opinions like, wow, they're kind of messy. They didn't make their bed or whatever that may be. So,
Yeah. And I
okay.
think for the most part, people are always looking for red flags. So the last thing you want to do is give them a reason to have, it's a shame. Most people don't look for the green flags, they're just looking for the red flags on these dates. And I think virtual backgrounds can work. I mean, we're both using one right now. Sometimes if you're wearing the wrong thing, you kind of disappear. So it's really important to not have like a lot of patterns. And I highly recommend that people wear red or black is a great color for men. It makes you look more, I don't know, masculine, powerful. I don't, I just think that those have been proven scientifically to be the best colors, red, black, um, and not to wear a lot of patterns that are going to be distracting.
I like how you framed your frame where your face is, you know, at the camera. You're not, there's not a ton of white space or you're like shrunken down and they can't really see you. So it's kind of nice to be able to show like part of your body, right? Like that's important.
Absolutely. One of the things that they tell you is when you're, and in this case, I'm not sure if you can see it, but like when you're speaking and you show your hands, people feel more comfortable. Uh, there's something psychologically that feels inauthentic or like you can't fully trust someone if you can't see their hands. So if you are doing virtual dates, if you can have something where the camera is far enough away from you where people can see your hand, that's actually something that is highly recommended.
I like to tell my clients to have a coffee or wine or tea while they're on the date. So it's like, oh, hey, Arlene, let's have a little coffee date or let's have a little happy hour. And yeah, I'm showing you my hands and things like that. Probably don't want to be eating while you're on this virtual date with somebody because then the way you eat might come off as weird and they're just judging you or finding reasons not to see you again. But yeah, I like to also tell the clients to use movements and gestures and, you know, like their eyes, like be expressive because man, we can only do so much on a video date. It's like, how are you going to make yourself look exceptional? Yeah, what else? What other tips can you give them?
So, I mean, and to your point, I think that you can get really creative about a virtual date and not just have it be two talking heads. You could do, like you said, a happy hour. There are online games. You can play 20 questions of like, taking turns asking questions to get to know each other without it being an interrogation, but more gamify it so it's a lot more palatable. I think it's also really important to be on time. And sometimes folks don't realize that setting up technology, there could be issues, right? So you definitely want to do it in advance of the actual time that you have to meet someone, because what ends up happening is all of a sudden things aren't working or you're getting phone calls or something's happening. And if you could avoid anything that's going to make you late, that would be ideal. But I did read this really funny thing to open it up with if you happen to be late because you had some tech issues. I read this thing where somebody says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, the traffic was terrible," even though you're not driving anywhere. So
That's
that's
cute. That's cute.
right. That could be a cute way to do that. But yeah, definitely be on time because there are some people that being late is a pet peeve. And then, we were talking about the virtual backgrounds, but really a key thing to that is if you're meeting someone on an online platform, you really don't know who you're dealing with, and you're on this virtual platform, the last thing you want to do is have something in the background that kind of identifies where you are or where you frequent from a safety perspective, because until you feel comfortable with someone, you really should have anonymity. And I think people forget about that when they're doing virtual dates.
To that point, I was reading something or some kind of TikTok video where this private detective was saying, women and men, when you're at a place where you frequent a lot, don't check into that place because people can start establishing your pattern and it's not safe for you. And she's like, when you're going to a pizza place, check in after you leave there. Don't check in while you're there, especially if you're by yourself or there's a stalker or whatever that may be. You just never know. And these are the things we really don't think about because social media is everywhere, right? We're on like all these different platforms and we're checking in, letting our friends know where we are. But yeah, that's another point. Sorry to go off on a tangent, but
No, that is
yeah.
such a good point. That is such a good point. And even for definitely do it after the fact. I mean, so I always talk to women and men because everybody can have a problem. Anybody can have a problem. I actually have a male friend who was invited on a date to meet with a woman, and two women were there, and they ended up like robbing him. They met at a hotel. It was some sort of hookup situation, and he got beat up and they took his money. And so men are equally at risk. Well, I shouldn't say equally, but they're at risk as well. So you just need to be mindful. Don't assume things. And yeah, I know people who someone right now that I just had a conversation with recently, she's in the music industry and she's being stalked by someone. And so the first advice was don't check into places until after the fact, or if you go somewhere, post it after the fact, because it's very dangerous. We're forgetting that we have this immediacy on social media, and we're not thinking, and you're by yourself and you're posting, you're not realizing there's a whole world that's getting access to this. So it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So when you say that people can play games or do a bunch of questions when they're on this Zoom video call, do you suggest them actually sharing the screen of actual questions, or you're just saying just have questions on the side and say, hey, do you mind if we kind of play a game and let them know that I'm going to be reading off a question sheet of
Yeah,
questions? Otherwise, it's kind of weird to like rattle off questions and not explain that you're going by some kind of icebreaker thing, right?
absolutely. So I don't know if you recall, but years ago, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was this big brouhaha over a New York Times article with 36 questions that someone came up with that actually helped people fall in love faster. And as a matter of fact, I remember there were events that were held. I actually was part of an event that we held, myself and another matchmaker, where we brought people together to ask themselves these 36 questions. So that's still out there. That could be a fun thing to do. And they're just thought provoking questions. That's not like an interrogation. Like sometimes people forget how to interact when they're dating. This is just really like, I think most of them are open ended, and it's just to get to know someone deeply, but it also triggers a lot of emotions inside people. So that could be a fun thing. They also have like online games that you can play. I mean, I'm just saying that it could be creative. It doesn't have to be. Although I will say this, I'm a big believer, and I'm curious what your thoughts are for a first date, especially a zero date. I think a half hour to an hour max. I don't think it needs to go beyond that. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think the first meet or date should be maybe 60 minutes. Online, it could just be 45. Like you could really get a good gauge of what someone's like for 45 minutes staring at their screen or whatever. And I also like to tell people to look into their camera hole when they're speaking. So I try not to look at your face on here. I'm trying to look at the camera. So it looks like I'm talking to you and looking in your eyes. But yeah, I think that's totally plenty of time. But first date in person, I feel like it could be 60 minutes, 90 minutes, but 90 minutes max. Like, don't hold someone
Yeah.
hostage. Like, my philosophy is always leave them wanting more, and especially say goodbye when you're laughing about something and enjoying everybody, enjoying their company, and be like, oh my gosh, Arlene, this was so much fun. I just had a great time with you, and then leave, because then that's what they're going to remember, right? Like, the last thing about you is Arlene was really fun. I would love to see her again. Not go back and forth until we have nothing to talk about and it's been 3 hours and then now we leave and my last impression of Arlene is going to be like, oh my gosh, that was so boring, right? Because even though the first 2 hours were great, the last hour was kind of lame because we had nothing to talk about. So it's like, you do lose your energy. You can't stay on your A game for 3 hours. I mean, that's hard. I mean, you're not a professional performer or entertainer. So that's kind of how I feel. 60 minutes to 90 minutes is a great first date. Leave them wanting more. That way they remember you as, oh, wow, that was really fun. I think I want to invite her out again. So,
Yeah. I agree. And it's funny that you mentioned 3 hours because I just recently had a client who I had someone that I wanted to introduce to her for quite some time. And I was about to go on vacation and she kept insisting, I don't usually give out phone numbers. I want people to actually meet for the first time in person. And because I was about to go on vacation and she was insisting, I was like, okay, fine, I will connect you to via phone. Well, they went ahead and had like a 3 hour conversation and he disclosed every possible thing he could about himself, including any negativity, and they happen to be of a certain age. So of course it goes into the health conversation and he went over every single procedure that he's ever, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it was just too much too soon. And I honestly don't know. I think people have this mindset of like, I'm just going to give them everything. And if they still like me, great. That's not how
yeah.
human nature works. Like you have to develop a relationship where someone is already invested in you to want to deal and tolerate or whatever with everything, the good with the bad, right? But if somebody doesn't know you and you just blur out all this stuff, and I'm not saying do the bait and switch or be hypocritical if you're asked a direct question and you can answer it, whatever, but this was just so much. So they went on this 3 hour date. And I'm like, what did you leave for the actual meeting in person? And of course, it fizzled out because too much too soon usually fizzles out. Everybody's gets all excited, right? But that usually doesn't work out. I mean, I don't know if you've had that happen with your clients.
Well, because they just vomited all this information over 3 hours and then she hangs up and she's like, what do I like about him? What did I dislike? And now she found reasons to not go out with him again, right? She's almost looking for these red flags to not see him again. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with being a little bit mysterious and let people just peel back the layers and slowly get to know you, because I am more forgiving of even a platonic friend if I, like you said, invested in her, knew her better, than if she has these little tidbits of qualities that are a little bit unattractive. I will probably overlook that because I already liked a lot of the qualities from before. So I get it. Like, dating is actually kind of like a game, right? It's a
Yeah.
smart game if you know how to play it right. It can be very, very strategic. Like, of course, you're not going to tell someone you just met all of your health issues and what you think of politics and sex and religion. Like, that's too much. Like, dating
Yeah.
should be easier than that. Dating is not about, here's all the information you have about me, love me or leave me or whatever. It's like, no, no.
I don't know what's going on this day and age, I feel like a lot of the social norms that at least I was raised on have gone out the window. To your point, people are talking about things that were topics that were somewhat avoided initially until you felt that you had formed enough intimacy with someone where you felt comfortable talking about these things. But it seems like social norms have gone out the window, and it's detrimental because it does complicate the ability to actually connect and find common ground with people if you're just, like you said, diary of the mouth. It's like you can't, you're not holding back anything. So that's an area. And what's interesting is that it's happening at every age level. It's not just one group of people. It just seems like our society has gone in that direction. I'm hoping that the pendulum swings back to the middle. I don't want it to be an extreme either, but just swing back to the middle, please, because I can't, it's too much. And it's so complicated for us as coaches and matchmakers to put people together and get them to be authentic without going overboard.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. For the listeners out there, hopefully they're thinking back, okay, I had this really great first date with this great guy, and I told him everything about me, and it seemed like he really liked me and wanted to see me again. And then if he just ghosts you or disappears, like that's probably why, is because you told him all this information about you that he would maybe have been more accepting if you would have told him on the third or fourth date, not the first 10 minutes of your date. So maybe that'll be an aha moment for somebody out there. But I agree. I agree. I mean, it seems like maybe we watch a movie or a sitcom and then people are like, oh, she's so brave to tell everything about herself. She's so different, or she speaks her mind. That's so refreshing. I think maybe people think, oh, it's so refreshing for me to speak my mind, and a guy's going to appreciate that and he should like me for who I am or what I am. And is not necessarily that way in real life. I mean, maybe on TV it is, or in the movies, but I say that when you date, you have to be smart. You have to be strategic about sharing information and
Yeah.
really go that route. And why would you tell someone your whole life story on the first date? You wouldn't even tell a platonic friend that, right? You wouldn't even tell a random stranger all that stuff. It's like, just be cautious about what you reveal.
Yeah. I don't know what happens to people when they interact for with the desire to connect and find love, because they both know this going in. Something goes out the window, to your point, because when you're at a cocktail party and the kind of conversations that you have with complete strangers is measured and limited because you know that this is a complete stranger. That is the case when you meet someone, right? To date, you're looking for common ground, you want to connect, and you want to find things in common, and that starts the beginning of a relationship. But people want to put the cart before the horse, and I think that's why everyone's struggling. And I think part of it is just this immediacy to everything we do. Instant, everybody wants that instant gratification. You want it fast and now, and press a button, and just, that's just not the way relationships develop. Relationships take time, energy, and thoughtfulness, and also being self-aware and being kind and all this other stuff that you know where people start to get, like sort of get an opinion of you. So for example, people start talking about past relationships and how terrible their exes are, etc. And what the science shows is that when you badmouth somebody else to a complete stranger, the negative stuff that you're saying about the stranger, about your ex or whatever, is actually attributed to you.
Yeah.
So there's research that shows that, because they don't know who you're talking about. So you're just saying certain things. So that negativity that you're bringing into this conversation is now attributed to you. And it's a ding on you, not your ex.
Right.
So if people learn that, that's why I like to do the, focus on the science and the research to understand how things actually land and understand the psychology and all of that, which is super interesting to know. And if people know that, they'll refrain from like, okay, I don't want to be perceived as this or that. So I'm going to refrain from that kind of conversation. So those are
Right.
the things I like to share with my clients.
I always believe that if you're bad mouthing your ex and you're not saying things that are neutral or positive, you're probably not ready to move on from that relationship or that ex. Like it bothers you so much that maybe you need to talk to someone about it, maybe a therapist, maybe a friend, maybe a mom or dad or sister. Like you're really not over that. And for you to badmouth someone on a date, it just means you're not ready to receive your next partner or relationship. You're just not ready to let go yet. So that's just something, it also looks bad on a date, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
like I now attribute to all these negative things you said about your ex to you, and I don't want to see you again. Like that's a red flag for me, you know? So yeah, I just did a video short about that topic, like a 1 minute snippet about how you're
Oh,
not ready to date if you're bad mouthing your ex. So that's interesting. So with these virtual dates, how many virtual dates should I go on before I meet someone in person? Just one virtual date, one video date, and then try to make plans if they're in the same city as me?
that's such a great question because I'm a big believer of if things went well and you have an interest in seeing someone again in person, and I do recommend maybe one virtual date. I don't think it's necessary to do two.
Mhm.
Then close the deal before you close the video date. So in other words, say, hey, I had such a great time. I would love to see you again. I'm free Thursday or Saturday. Give people concrete, because I think these sometimes people say, oh, we should do this again soon, or we should definitely get together, or I'll be in touch. That's not ideal, because you want to just set it up right there and then. And if somebody has a little pushback or is not fully interested, they might say, you know what, let me take a look at my calendar and I'll get back to you. That means take a hint, right? And let them get back to you, because people are not always comfortable expressing whether or not they're interested in pursuing the relationship, which is a shame, right? Because this whole dating process is a self-selection process so that people get to know one another and decide yes or no. It's not anything personal. It's just you know, your taste in someone, the type of people you want to be with, etc. But everybody takes it so personal and they feel very, rejection. I'm not a believer of rejection. I'm like, they're just not for me, or I'm
Right.
not for them, just if people can kind of embrace that thought process, they wouldn't be so hurt if someone chooses not to pursue the situation. But what the data shows is that if you meet someone online and you've corresponded and you've met on a virtual date, that you want to meet them in person within 2 weeks, before 2 weeks,
Okay.
because what happens is that in that time frame you start to now create other ideas about like your own vision of them, and then inevitably our imagination gets carried away and we become more disappointed. You're more likely to not be interested in someone if you wait too long to meet them. So they say, that around 2 weeks is the ideal time to go ahead and meet. And if you could meet sooner, that's even better. I remember when I was dating online, and that's how I met my husband. I was very quick. I was like, listen, I hate text messaging. I hate all that stuff. I'm like, let's just meet and see how it goes. Meet at a public location where you feel safe, etc. See how it goes. And if there's a connection there, you continue to see each other. If there isn't, it's great to meet you. You're not for me, but you're wonderful. I hope that you find love and to move on, right?
So when you're on this video date, the woman should reveal like her free days and times, and hopefully the guy takes the hint, or you're saying the guy should be like, hey, I really had a great time meeting you. I would love to see you in person. I'm free Tuesday and Friday. Would you like to meet up then? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
should
yeah.
either party give them the free days and let the other person agree to it?
Absolutely. I think that either party is fine. I know that some people traditionally feel that the men should make the move, and that's fair. If a guy's comfortable, pursuing the future date, that's fine. But if you really feel like, wow, this really went well, I really like this person, and I do have an interest in meeting them, then go ahead and put it out there. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think only around 10% of the women are actually doing that. And these women are having more success or success a lot faster than people who are just sitting and waiting, which is like 90% of the women sitting and waiting for the men to make every move. And unfortunately, I think that men have sort of moved away from being the ones that are pursuing. They're allowing, they've been doing a lot of surveys lately where men want to be pursued or they want the woman to say this or that, and to make them aware that they're interested and that they want to pursue the relationship. I just think don't go overboard, you
Right.
know?
Right.
It, there's a nice way to do it without going overboard. I think the women have been dropping their handkerchief, proverbial handkerchief from back in the day for a long time. This is nothing new. Women have been making moves all along. They just were very subtle about it.
I also feel very strongly that if you like somebody, you should actually say, gosh, I had a really great time. I really enjoy this. I would love to see you again. Or I like you. Like you should let people know you like them
Yeah.
because remember back in like elementary school or junior high or high school, if you knew a guy liked you actually liked him back, right? Even
Yeah.
because you knew that. So it's like, why not apply those same skills to real life? It's like if you like somebody, let them know because if they're on the fence about you and they know you like them, they might actually like you back and give you another
Right.
chance. So I mean, I was very, very shy growing up, very, very shy. Even through college, I was a shy person. But as you get older, you tend to not be as shy. I became not as shy as I developed sales skills and know how to talk to people as a server and as a salesperson. So, but now I'm thinking, I just want to like shake some of my clients and be like, just let them know you like her. Because what's weird is if two people come back from a date and then I get their date feedback and then they're like, well, I don't know. I couldn't read that person. Oh, I'm not sure
Right.
if he liked me. I couldn't really tell. It's like, none of you, both of you did not tell the other person you had a great time and you would like to see them again, but yet you both want to see each other again. So, I mean, I guess that's why we're in business, right? As matchmakers, we
Right.
actually help nudge them and be the middleman. But man, so many dates just, they just happen and they're like, I'm not sure if they liked me or not. It's like your date should be sure if you liked him or not after the date. Like if you make that known, that would help your dating, a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think so many people, well, let's just say this. If you're doing a virtual date, body language is not as obvious as it would be in a in-person date. So there needs to be a little bit more communication, like to your point of letting the person know how you feel. And I know there's vulnerability in that, but when you're vulnerable, that makes you a very brave person.
Yeah.
You know, people look at vulnerability as a weakness, and it's not. It's actually being very brave and bold and able to communicate your feelings. And that's what's going to bring intimacy. That's what's going to bring connection. If you're holding back and you're putting up these walls or you're, trying to act aloof, that's not going to create any connection with the individual. And you're going to end up in a situation where you actually went on a date, to your point, and you really liked the person and thought there was some viable, relationship here, but it didn't happen. The spark didn't, the proverbial spark, because people were holding back. So I'm a big believer of let them know. I would say close it right there, close the date, and you were talking about sales, which is funny. It's like, as for the sale, sometimes people need to hear that, like, yeah, I really want to do business with you. And yeah, and I think that it's perfectly okay for women to do it. It's just, don't go overboard. Don't be aggressive per se. Just lay it out there like, I really, this was amazing. I'm so pleased with this conversation or getting to know you. I'd love to meet up at some point. I'm free this day and this day. That's it.
What if you took it a step further and be like, gosh, Arlene, I had such a great time talking to you on Zoom. If we were to part ways, I would give you a big hug right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, how would you
Oh
make it
yeah.
flirty and be like, wow, if we weren't on a Zoom call, I'd probably give you a small kiss on the cheek or whatever as a parting hug or whatever. I mean, I guess you just have to find your way of communicating, and the more Zoom calls, more Zoom dates you do, the more comfortable you will be, right? And I even offer to do a
Like
mock
a
Zoom
mock.
date with
Yeah.
clients. And you know what? They don't take me up on it. So it's like they feel like they got it handled because they're doing Zoom calls for work. But it's different. If you're dating, doing a date one, you maybe I can remind him or her to smile more or to be more animated or wear something where they could see, your clavicle or, a
Right.
little a V-neck or whatever that may be, right? Or hey, you might want to check out your background. It's kind of messy and they never thought of it. So I
Yeah.
would say only 10% of my clients take me up on my free Zoom dates. So, but if anyone's listening out there wants to do a practice Zoom date, I'd be happy to do one with you just so you can get some input. So,
I
yeah,
think that's a great idea. And I think you brought up something super important, which is being flirty.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people don't really know how to flirt. And that's something that's important because you want to convey that you have an interest in someone for a romantic situation, not this is not a business Zoom date, right?
right,
And I think because people don't flirt, then it's like it's kind of weird. It's like, oh, I don't know. I guess we had a nice conversation, but I wasn't sure if they were really interested in me. And so flirting is a big, big component. And it could be words, it could be, playing with your hair. There's a lot of different things that come across as flirting at this, obviously if you're doing virtual, you can't really touch someone's hand or, they're like appropriately touch, which is another way to flirt, but definitely that is a key thing. So most of it is verbal really to be able to say that. I love your suggestion. Like, hey, if we were in the same room, I'd kiss you on the cheek right now. I'd give you a big hug or something. Yeah.
right. Just to convey the message that this isn't just friend zone date. And or especially when you first hop on a Zoom call, the guy can give her a compliment like, oh, wow, that blouse looks really nice on you. That's a good color. Wear a color so then the guy can say that to you, right? So it's like there are things you could do to fish for compliments, like make sure your makeup looks good, your hair looks good. And if he says, oh, that's a nice top on you, if you know you have a fabulous body, then stand up and be like, oh, this blouse or whatever, like just be flirty. Of course, these are easy tips for us to give because we're matchmakers and we know what can make guys tick, but it's a lot of practice. I mean, it's just take me up on a Zoom call mock date, or you can actually practice a Zoom mock date with a guy friend and be like, hey, can we critique each other if we were to go on this quote unquote date? And just to see, I mean, you can even suggest a mock date with a guy you have a crush on, like who knows what'll
Ooh.
happen. So,
I love that. Well, and I also, to your point about giving compliments, I think it's really important for women to also give compliments.
yes,
Because I think that we already get a lot of compliments as women.
yes,
Our girlfriends compliment us. It's just the norm that it's acceptable. Whereas men don't typically
yeah,
compliment one another. In fact, they kind of put each other down. That's how they interact. And they're very competitive. And so they're already operating on a deficit. So if you're meeting someone and they get on the Zoom and you see how attractive they are, you're like, wow, you're way better looking than your photos, or oh, look, you're so handsome. I approach people all the time. Of course, we're matchmakers, so
right,
like you said, it's easy for us. But do something where you make it clear from the get-go, oh, very nice, nice outfit. You look great, or I love your background, or what is that book back there that you're
right.
reading? Something to break the ice and make it just easy. That's always helpful, but definitely compliments.
I agree. I agree. So, okay, Arlene, one last virtual date tip for them before I say goodbye to you. Do you have one more up your sleeve that you can help them?
Well, I mean, I did talk about this a little bit, but I definitely have some sort of conversation starter, and it could be the compliment. I think people get on a Zoom and it's immediately awkward. So having something that you can talk about or something that you feel like, okay, this might be an interesting thing to talk about, especially if you met them online. If you read their online profile, there might be something on there that you can bring up. Hey, I'm remembering your profile and you mentioned something about traveling to exotic places. What exactly were you talking about? Or anything, just be prepared, because if you're an introvert or a little awkward and you don't usually do a lot of small talk, preparation is key. Like you said, being strategic, dating is being strategic, but also preparing in advance to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and looking for those ways to connect with someone.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's okay to also say, gosh, I haven't done one of these video dates at all, and I'm actually kind of nervous. And it's okay to admit
Ab-
you're nervous, and that's a good icebreaker, right? And then the other
Absolutely.
person hopefully says, "Oh, Arlene, nothing to be nervous about." Or, then you just naturally be real and honest. And I'd rather meet a guy who's a little bit awkward or shy than a guy who's so smooth on Zoom that gosh, he just like probably has tons of these Zoom dates and has women lined up. Like just think about it, ladies. If a guy is a little bit shy or awkward, he could be a diamond in the rough. Like give him a chance to express who he is and to get to know him. Like there's so many women out there that just so
Yeah.
judgmental
So
about it, not give guys a chance. They're so close-minded. So yeah.
absolutely. I think that the purpose of that Zoom date is to really assess that they are who they say they are, that they look the way they portray themselves online, to find common ground and to just determine whether or not you actually want to meet in person. And I would say give grace, because people are very nervous and awkward, not just because they're like that in general, but on a date, they
Right.
might be that way. And so if I'm a big believer, especially when I was dating many years ago, I would always say if somebody doesn't give me the heebie-jeebies or repulse me altogether, I will meet them because I want to, see, because sometimes you may not immediately find someone attractive, especially for women. And then as you hear the way they speak, their mannerisms, and even when you meet in person, their scent, all these things go into what we call chemistry, which could really only be determined in person. You can
Yeah.
Chemistry is not something you would get over video, because you're losing out on so many other aspects of a human being. So I would encourage people to meet the person, even if you're a little iffy. Now, if you feel unsafe, or if you don't feel like there's someone that would, like where you wouldn't feel comfortable meeting, there's something off about them, then absolutely trust your judgment. But if not, check it out. You never know. I tell you, I've been surveying women and, well, couples who have been in long term, and I mean like 25, 40 years of marriage. And 9 times out of 10, I will ask the woman, were you immediately attracted to your spouse? And they almost always say no. They were not immediately attracted. So just give a guy a shot and you might be surprised.
I agree. I agree. So Arlene, tell people how would they find you and a little bit about your business and what's your specialty?
So my big specialty is I'm more connected to coaching, because I feel like I want to help teach people how to fish instead of give them a fish. So I am a matchmaker as well, but I prefer to work with people who are really coachable, who really want to learn about the science and the research of love and relationships to really be able to utilize the knowledge, not just learn about it, but how to put it into practice. And the best way to reach me is through my website, AV Connections with an X, AVCONNEXIONS, or they can go to my other website, which is getrealgetlove.com. Either way, they can contact me. I'm also on all social media at Arlene Washburn. And I just want to help people find love. That's my mission in life, is to help millions of people reach their relationship goals. And that's what I'm striving for through my work, and also working with other love industry professionals and supporting them in their businesses as well.
Well, thank you so much, Arlene. I will put all the information in the show notes. And yeah, I really enjoyed this interview with you. And I will see you soon, everybody. Bye.